Yeah, so do I.
Okay, we're on.
Facebook to watch.
Okay, yeah. Can I go on Facebook to watch this as well?
Yeah, you can pull your phone out and go on Facebook.
Exactly, and check it. Great delay all around. We got it going? We are live.
Yeah, just go for it.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll,
we'll wait until you get a feed. Just when
Yeah.
you reset that thing. Open the video again. Technical issues maybe. Oh, Stephen. Greetings from Gibraltar.
okay, we're live. Really important thing here at Camera Image is at the back of the ARRI stand, free coffee. This place to go. Great coffee.
And beers.
Well, I don't drink so anymore. It means I'm kind of just had a great lunch with a bunch of people, and I'm the only one that's still standing. Red wine did it for them. Great thing about Camera Image is meeting people. You can see Kit, and Kit's fun, but it's bumping into people. Like, introduce yourself.
Rory O'Brien.
On CML, who I've bumped into so many people on CML. It's just brilliant that everyone, there's a whole democracy here that there's no, students can talk to Storaro. If you grab him in the corridor, he will talk to you, just. No. It's nice at the moment is this is empty. It's normally packed as hell, but Storaro is going and talking. So double about Kit. Behind me, DOP Kit. I absolutely love their lighting kit. I'm sorry, yeah. I'm a cameraman, I hate sound. It's dreadful. Canon need to shrink their camera. Separate recorder on the back is too big. They need to record raw, compressed, the same as you can get with a 6200. But, you know, they'll get there, I'm sure. We've been robbed. There it is, Venice. I think it's really smart. I mean, I like, if its pictures are as good as an F65, I'll be happy. But the thing that's really smart about it is the image sensor, the sizes they're using, that they're using standard sizes. They're using S35, they're using 3perf, 4perf, and then full frame 35 stills, which means I can shoot with lenses that I know and get framings that I know. Other cameras bring in weird image sizes. You don't know if your lens is going to cover. You can't go in and go 50mm there, and that's the shot. It just destroys a whole band of knowledge. Whereas this, you can utilize that knowledge. It's brilliant. It's a really nicely designed camera. Really looking forward to testing it. I loathe and detest this one. Its menus are just awful. Truly awful. Hiya.
Hi.
VariCam Pure. It's what VariCam 35 should have been from the very beginning. Have we broken up?
Yeah, it's just a bit of an audio.
Yeah.
Just
Put that separately in my pocket.
yeah.
Yeah, done.
Yeah?
So it's not hanging around. Sorry. You can join us. Yeah, so when they brought the VariCam 35 out, the RAW recorder was hung off the back, and it was like this long, like the C700 is now when you get a RAW recorder. By chopping off a lot of the internal stuff that you don't need when you're shooting RAW and building the RAW recorder into it, you've taken a really good camera head and you've got it built in RAW. It's a comfortable size, really like it. It's not bad images as well. This is totally the technical side of camera image. For me, this is the least important side of it, although it's quite fun to talk to the manufacturers.
You get to the BSC exhibition,
And all of those. The really great thing here is actually meeting people and talking to people.
Maxi Milano says, what are your thoughts on real-world performance of the double ISO on the VariCam?
Ah, interesting.
We'll just
Keep-
specifically stand still when talking.
Okay. Let's wander on elsewhere. Nice lenses there, by the way. And it's interesting, let's just do this. Lenses for standard sizes, and the Thalia, kind of like the S7s, they're designed for large image format, and good lenses. There's such a... You can't get away from us, Kerry.
And we're back.
Okay, so we've missed out the middle of the equipment exhibition because there's no Wi-Fi signal. Thing that was interesting going through Hawk is they only do anamorphics, and so they're very fashionable at the moment, as are rebuilt Covas. But next week they probably won't be fashionable, which is a worrying thing about lenses at the moment. So let's, on the subject of lenses, take us home. I'm going to steal your egg crate.
By all means, Chef.
And make it collapse. Oh dear. Old man. So, questions?
No more questions at the moment.
No? Okay, so Camerimage is a great place to meet people. It's a great place to go to technical workshops, and it's also a great place to see films.
A great place to gather content and lots of cinematographers.
The big problem here is they can't, most of the theatres, project film. They can project digitally, but as we found out this morning, when it all went rat shit, they can't deal with film, which is really sad.
So there are lots of, what kind of workshops and seminars?
There are a phenomenal range of workshops, from how to light a music video, to technical ones, about ACES, to discussions by cinematographers about how they shot a movie and they show the movie, to there's almost anything you can imagine there's a workshop about, but only cameras, only cinematography. And that's what's so cool here, that you, as I said, it's very quiet at the moment and you're not bumping into people because they're all in the theatre behind us. But that is the real thing. The exchange of information between people is what makes this place exciting.
And so with that, we have lots of parties as well at night.
There are.
This is where you bump into.
There are lots of parties at night. I have been avoiding them simply because I am not able to cope with it. If I'm going to do a workshop and teach one in the morning, I can't stay up till 3 o'clock drinking. But most people do. And it is Party City. And that is where you meet other cameramen, cinematographers, and it is where you talk a lot. I've bumped into people I haven't seen for years, and it's been great fun.
Someone's asked, do you prefer anamorphic or spherical yourself?
Aha, good question. I actually prefer the look of anamorphic, but I prefer the size of spherical. So that man over there needs to make me tiny anamorphics in future.
What would you say, so someone's saying, for a beginner cinematographer in the digital age, how much time should I invest in learning ACES?
How much time? It doesn't take long to learn what a cinematographer needs for ACES. And in fact, I said it politely this morning at the Academy workshop, but now I'll say it in English. As a cinematographer, you actually need to know fuck all about ACES to use it. It's a case of knowing that you have a standard image transform in and a standard image transform out. You have a standard. When I started, we had printer lights, you knew where you were. Any argument about what the pictures looked like, you could say, use a standard printer light. When we scanned film onto telecine, we had telecine alignment film from Kodak, you had a standard. And then it went to shit. That I have 12 standard lookup tables from different post houses that are all standard lookup tables from log C to 709, and they're all different. So the thing about ACES is it's the same. You've got a standard, you've got a fixed response. If there's any argument about what your exposure's like, what your camera's like, you can say, put the standard IDT on, put the standard ODT on, what's it look like? If it doesn't look okay at that stage, then you have screwed up. But at least you've got a reference. If you know how it works, you can gradually get into detail of how you can use it. But in reality, you just want to use an ACES workflow you don't have to know anything. You just shoot it. Then as you start to use it, or come to one of my workshops, you can learn how it can be manipulated to work in your favor on a set.
So when you ask a question, they can't hear it as well as you can say it, so just repeat the question.
Yes, okay.
So the next question is, when is your next live workshop?
When is my next live workshop? It's meant to be on Thursday night at the Netherlands Film Academy. An issue now, I might not make it, but that's the second of a series of workshops I'm doing there on ACES. The first workshop that I did 2 weeks ago was purely theory, and the one this Thursday is very, very practical. We have all the high-end cameras. We have X300 high dynamic range Sony monitors. We have the Dolby monitors. We have Resolve. We have Prelight. We have Pomfort Live Grade, and I'll be demonstrating in a practical situation and teaching people how to use these, and they'll be using them themselves.
So how is the set lighting different for HDR and SDR? Is it? Do you find it?
It's interesting. The difference between lighting for SDR and HDR, people say there's a difference. I don't believe there is. I believe there's good lighting and bad lighting. And the classic example of that was we're restoring a 20-year-old film at the moment as a project with the Academy. And that was in no way ever shot for HDR. But it was shot by Alex Thompson BSC, and it was shot remarkably well. And you can grade it for HDR. So I don't think you have to make accommodations for HDR. I think one of the big problems with HDR is people think they're going to get a huge amount more shadow detail and a huge amount more highlight detail. And that's sort of true, but it's not. Because I live in an apartment with huge windows, white walls, white leather sofa, and I've got a white face. So I've got a 55-inch set. All of that bounces back into the shadows. I've got an HDR set. I gain nothing in the shadows because all of that fills the shadows in. I do gain in the highlights. But to get HDR in the shadows at home, I need to put blackout blinds in, paint my walls black, put black velvet on my sofas, and wear a burqa so my face doesn't reflect in the screen. It's nonsense. However, the highlights can be really interesting. What unfortunately people are doing, and I was talking to John Bailey this morning about it, is that grades are being done where on Groundhog Day, for example, he's got backlights and kicks on faces. And in the HDR grade that was done before he got there, they're nuked out. They are so bright. They're never what he would have done ever. And they've all had to be pulled back because they distract you from the real picture. And there's a big problem at the moment that I've noticed a lot on Netflix and Amazon series where and there was one example shown here where a cinematographer will put a big window behind somebody. And it's not a case of using that to tell the story, it's just that's the way it's framed because it's the same way the other way around. And if you have a large bright object close to your main talent, your eye goes to the bright object rather than the talent. It's just basic cinematography, it's basic principles, and people are forgetting that. And they're saying, oh, we'll shoot everything with practicals because the cameras are sensitive. Now, the practicals can light the room, but if you've got a table lamp, you need to ND the side of it that's towards camera. Let the light spill out the back, but not out the front. Because if you have it out the front, instead of looking there at the artist, I'm going to be looking over there at the light. And that's not what you want. If you look at Citizen Kane, with its huge depth of field, you always know where to look because Greg Toland always popped the lead artist at that point by about half a stop, maybe 2/3 of a stop, brighter than the rest of the scene. Your eye goes to the brightest point, and if the brightest point is a window or a lamp, then you've screwed up.
Do you use a light meter still? Or
Do I use a light meter is the question.
And do you recommend, which one do you recommend?
Okay, and which meter do I recommend? There are meters out now that I'm not familiar with, so I can't really recommend a meter now. The answer to meters is yes. CMOS cameras, and if I was starting now, I'd be looking at those.
Right. Do you have any preferred digital camera for its qualities?
Okay. Do I have any preferences on cameras? And the answer is actually no. I used to, but now they're all so good that it's a tiny difference between them. As I just did all the tests of the cameras and pushed them to their limits, I did say there were two that for me, stood out as being marginally better than the others in terms of color response and highlight response, and that was the Alexa and the F65. And I'm hoping that the Venice has a response at least as good as the F65, and by response I mean color response.
Right. Someone's made a little bit of a joke saying, "How about a bit of love for film?" Just talk about digital.
A bit of love for film. I love film. That's where I come from. But the problem with film now is, point to make, I got my union card working in the labs. Back in the early 70s, to get in the union you had to have a job, and to get a job you had to be in the union. So it's a kind of catch-22. And the only way you could get in the union at that time was to work in the labs. Of course, when I applied for the job, it was like, no, I don't want to work in cameras. I just want to work in something associated with cinema, because I know I'll never be good enough to work in the movies. Of course, the second I got my union card, I quit and got re-registered in the camera department. But because of that film processing background, film now scares the hell out of me for a number of reasons. One, there's no development being done in film for years, and there will be no development. It's a dead format. It's what it was 10 years ago, and it's not going to change, which is fine if you want to work in a historical environment. However, the thing that scares me is processing, because a continuous process needs to have varying images going through it so it replenishes properly. You need.
Format cameras as well.
I'm not into. Okay, questions about large format cameras. I'm not into large format cameras. I think the way that we're shooting now, ACs have a hard enough job keeping stuff in focus with no rehearsals, random camera movement, and actors who can't hit marks. Sorry, who don't even know what marks are. And that we shoot wide open. There's a lovely story, I'm not going to name the actor. I asked a friend of mine who was the focus puller on a job how a certain star actor was on hitting marks. The reply was, hit his marks, you're lucky if he's in the same fucking room. So the problem with large format is unless we go to some predictable autofocus system, some really assisted focus system, we're going to get an awful lot of soft material. And you look at a big movie like American Made, which the operator was a friend of mine, but you look at the finished film and there's a huge amount of it that's soft. I don't like soft films.
So you got this, I think everybody knows about white balance, but there's also cameras that use black balance cameras as well. Some cameras are, allow you to
Yeah, this is, okay, the question's about white balancing and black balancing cameras. People know about white balancing, it's to do with the color temperature. Black balance is to do with the camera setup. Some cameras are actually very stable with their blacks, others are up and down like a horse drawers. They're all over the place. And some of them will black balance very quickly, and others take 20 minutes to black balance or longer. So if you change your shutter angle, your ISO, your running speed, some cameras you just keep shooting. Others you have to rebalance. And I tend not to use cameras that slow me down like that.
Great, so someone's asking, do you still test new camera formats such as Blackmagic and Reds, DSM, C2?
Okay, do I still test new cameras? Yes. The test I did in July covered everything that was available at the time that I didn't absolutely loathe. But they were objective tests. At the moment, I'm in the middle of doing a series of purely subjective tests of lower budget cameras. So I've got a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro, I've got a C200, I've got an EVA on the way. It's been a struggle getting hold of one of those, but it's on the way because I need it for weeks, months to do the tests I'm doing. I was going to include the FS7, but I haven't because this is a test of cameras that I would use. And the FS7 I don't like the menus of. I think they're appalling. I think it has a video-ish picture. So, sorry Sony, it's out of the test. It's not that I don't like Sony cameras, because I've already said I love the f/65. It's just that particular camera.
Right, so the next question is it possible to like black and white whilst filming in colour, as in black and white done in DI? How would you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, what I would do is turn the color off on the monitor. So I've got a black and white picture I'm looking at, and actually use a decent monitor. I carry my own personal monitor with me on shoots because I know what it looks like. The best way, of course, if you're going to do that, is create a LUT that has a different contrast, that has the look of the black and white stock that you want it to emulate, and then shoot with that in your monitoring system.
Yeah, so what's your opinion on LED lighting?
Aha! This is an interesting one. What's the question of what do I think of LED lighting? I love it and I hate it. I've had a lot of problems in the past with LED lighting, and at one point I would only use remote phosphor LED lighting. So from Cineo and from BB&S, because remote phosphor works differently. You're not actually looking at the LEDs, you're looking at a screen that gets excited, kind of like I do at times. But pure LED lighting now is getting much, much better. Only 2 years ago, I shot a film. I'm not going to mention which brand it was, but I was using a small LED, 1 foot square, battery on the back. It was hugely convenient to just go to my gaffer, kick her over there, wham, it's in place. There's no cables to run, it's clamped in place. It's got a built-in dimmer. It's great. You just set, yeah, just a bit down, down, perfect. Problem with it was, I was working with an actress with blonde hair, dyed blonde hair. Looked fine on the monitors, it looked fine on dailies. But when we got into the raw image and started to take it apart in the grade, the rims of her hair turned bright green in reacting with the LED, the frequencies of it. And I spent 2 days de-greening her hair, which was an awful waste of time. And the problem with LEDs is that CMOS cameras have spikes in their response. They're not even and smooth in their responses. They're more sensitive to certain frequencies. Different cameras are different responses. LED lights have their own spikes. Now sometimes those spikes are complementary with the camera and they balance each other out, and that's wonderful. And sometimes the bad spikes are in the same place, so everything gets doubled up and looks really awful. It is possible to pre-apply lights, and I know
Loads of questions coming in. It's good.
it's good fun to try.
Yeah. I think we're just trying to, we're getting into the motions of doing the live back.
Yeah. LEDs. Sorry, I forgot what we were talking about while I was waiting for the connection to come back.
You can switch to the word.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're back.
See, standing up, it's worked. Slightly higher camera. Amazing. I just want to go back to standards. I like ACES because it's a standard. And I also like cameras that use standard sizes, because I want to be able to take one of these lenses and know exactly what I'm getting. I want to say, shoot this man here and shoot him with a 50 there, and I know that he's going to be framed like this. And that's really, really important.
Great. We've got another question.
Go on.
Do you prefer cameras with better spatial resolution over pixel resolution, like RE versus Red?
Okay. Yeah. Do I prefer spatial resolution to pixel count? I think. How you measure that, I really don't know. I think there has been a rush to higher and higher pixel counts, which has led to odd frame sizes. And I would rather have a lower pixel count with a predictable size than a higher pixel count, because we had to do that to get the pixel count in to make the image different. There's also the issue that photo sites, it's a basic phenomenon that the larger the photo site is, the higher dynamic range there is, the lower noise there is, and generally the better the color. So you make your photo sites smaller and smaller to cram them into a sensor. There are compromises somewhere. Everyone is making them. You've just got to identify them for a given camera. Now, I'm not going to say which cameras I think make the biggest compromises, but I do put online raw files of everything the camera is capable of shooting. So if you want to look, there are EXRs on CML that you can download that are everything the camera can output. And you can look at them and decide for yourself what has the right color response, what has the worst noise, what has the worst highlight clipping. And I think the best balance is still the Alexa.
Yeah, so we can do the last question, which is, can you shed a bit more light on when exactly you choose to black balance and how often you typically do so?
When do you choose to black balance and how often should you do so? If you choose the right camera, your assistant will black balance at the start of the shoot and probably every morning, and that's it. If you're black balancing more often than that, you've got the wrong camera.
That's great. So at some point we might see you again. Round 3 of the interview.
Round 3 of the interview would be great fun. And try coming to Camera Image. There are a hell of a lot of people here. The queues go round and round the building at times for some of the fashionable workshops, like the music video ones. But you learn so much and meet so many people. It's tremendous.
So you've got movies that'll be an Oscar and you've got incredible Polish films.
You've got films from all over the world. Hi, talk about meeting people you know. It's films from all over the world, filmmakers all over the world. You've got retrospectives of cinematographers, so you're looking at a whole series of films, say, from John Toll, which is this year, and it's brilliant. It's just hard-on cinematography the whole time.